Hey everybody, Dr. Xellex Rivera. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I'm currently the Senior Director of Homeless Programs for shelters in New York City. And my words of wisdom is that the sky isn't the limit, right? It's higher than that. You can go as big and be anything that you possibly put your mind to. We're definitely in a day and age where that little saying that they taught us growing up that you can be anything, you literally now can be anything. So the sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning. And I'm happy to be here.
Dope. All right. So I'm about to do the introduction, the formal introduction. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Pill Talk Podcast. I got my good friend, special guest, Dr. Xellex Rivera, here with you. She has done many things, a lot in the community. She is from the Bronx, New York. She is a HBC grad from Livingstone College. She is the senior director of the homeless program. She has training in human services, homeless services, and social services. So everybody give a nice welcome to my good friend. I call her Lex. How you doing today?
Hey, how are you? I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here today, man. I appreciate you coming in, giving us a little background about yourself, and going to talk about your nonprofit, I Am She. So let's get into it. Let's get to know you a little better. So who are you?
I would say I am she, but that's a little cliche, ain't it? Right? So, I always laugh at people and I always tell them that, I'm just a regular girl from the Bronx. I'm just a product of a single parent household. My mother raised me and my sister. She did the best that she could. She became a nurse. She made sure we had food on the table. We did not go without. I come from strong West Indian female roots, right? I had a house full of West Indian women. So my work ethic, I think, stems from that. I went to, I'm a product of New York City public school system, believe it or not, up until high school, because then I went a little wild, right? So everybody understands that. So I went a little crazy, and my mother then put me in private school. She put me in an all-girls private school, in upstate New York. So that was a whole different way of life. And then I traveled down to the South. I went to Livingstone College, which again was different for, a Bronx native, a New York City person, because then I actually saw possums for the first time. I saw cows for the first time. I had saw all of these things for the very first time. But Livingstone definitely, in addition to going to private school for high school, changed my life. And then I came back home shortly after that. I started my first master's 2 years after undergrad. I got to think about it. Sorry, 2 years after undergrad. I did it because of a life trauma that happened. Let me not call it a trauma. I lost my job and I was like, what am I supposed to do now? Mm-hmm. And then because I come from a West Indian background, they won't pay for leisure things, but they will always pay for education. So I was like, okay, I'm going back to school. That's how I ended up with my first master's. And now you could kind of see where I'm at now. So it just kind of kept growing from that point. By trade, though, I am a mental health counselor. So I always want to emphasize that to people because I work in an administrative component or administrative role because I oversee the programmatic and the facility management of homeless shelters. But I'm a mental health counselor by trade. And my passion is delivery of services for homeless, not just families, but homeless people in New York City as a whole.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So let's back up a little bit, man. You just gave us so much. All right. What was your undergrad degree in, and what made you pursue your master's degree, and what was that in as well?
So ironically, my undergrad degree is in English. Mm-hmm. I know that's weird, right? So my undergrad degree is in English because I could have swore I was going to be a journalist. Like I was going to be on the news. I was going to be making reports and chasing stories. But then I realized that they typically was sending, new journalists into like storms and hurricanes and overseas and wars. I realized I didn't want to go overseas and I did not want to be in the rain reporting a story. So I finished my degree in English and I started working as an admissions counselor for my school. And then I came back home and I started working as an admissions counselor at one of the colleges up here. And then I lost my job. And then it was almost like I had to reinvent my career, right? Because I mean, not
Yeah.
that being an admissions counselor was going to be my career. I did enjoy, talking to the high school kids and just talking to people and traveling to talk, but I did not necessarily want to be in academia in the first place. So then once I lost my job, and remember I told you that, my family won't pay for leisure, but they'll always pay for education.
Yeah.
So I went back to school before my master's for drug addiction counseling. And I started that process. And then I was like, well, wow, because I thought, if I had a bachelor's degree, that a certification was much easier. Like, oh, I can get a certification. This is a piece of cake. It is not a piece of cake, right? So then I was like, well, let me stop going to this program. I'm gonna just go get a master's degree. So then I stopped that program, went to get a master's degree in generalized counseling. Now, when I did that process, it was like, oh, maybe I'll be a guidance counselor. Then I realized that kids weren't for me either. I really can't do the high school or the middle school setting. And there are other stipulations that come with being a guidance counselor, like ACS cases and abuse, like all those kind of things, and trauma that really happened to our children that I didn't think I was necessarily equipped for. So after my first master's, I ended up with a second master's, right? And then my second master's was in mental health counseling. So it was like a continuation of my generalized counseling program. And then I ended up getting the second one in mental health counseling. And then I said, oh, this is perfect, because back then I used to laugh and joke, because this was 2011, 2012. I used to laugh and joke like, well, the world's going crazy. I really didn't think the world was going crazy, but I was like, oh, the world's going crazy, so I'm going to, become a mental health counselor. And then that's what happened. So I pivoted, my career pivoted from drug addictions. I used to work in long-term drug addiction programs, to then I worked in detox and outpatient, and then it pivoted into homeless services. So I always tell people that I ended up working with the homeless because of God. It was never my focus to say, when I grow up, I want to work with the homeless population. It really was a matter of being dissatisfied with the current employer, the current field of work that I was in, and the luck of the draw. So that's why I believe that God put me with homeless people.
Okay, dope. So that one thing starting off of getting your certificate just kind of snowballed into just keep getting into the counseling role and getting educated on that. And then you went from 2 masters to getting your doctorate in counseling as well?
So ironically, I ended up with a 3rd master's and a PhD in social policy analyst and plan. So my doctoral degree is more focused in like nonprofit management, human services. So it makes me a better administrator. So that's why I always laugh and say that when I tell people, well, I majored in social policy analyst and plan, they're like, what does that mean exactly? And I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. It just makes me a better human service administrator in the nonprofit realm. So that's all it did. And my dissertation work it was focused on single adult millennials that are currently residing in New York City shelters. So, and that kind of happened ironically too. I was working in shelter, and I had a supervisor at the time who was enrolled in her doctoral program. And then, during one of our supervisions, she was like, oh, you really should consider this. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to go to school. I don't understand why I need to keep going to school. But I was like, all right, I'll research it. And then I kind of researched it, and I ended up in the school. So my friends laugh at me. They always say like, who just magically ends up enrolled into a school? And I'm like, I guess I do. I don't know.
You love education. That one thing we could take away from this.
Correct.
And that is dope. So with all of this, you get into the nonprofit. You got your doctorate in nonprofit. What made you get that in nonprofit administration?
So because of where I was in my career, I was already like either a program manager or a director of social services. And then I became a program director later on in my career. I knew that I wanted to elevate in the field of human services, but particularly with the homeless population. My ultimate goal, and I hope, well, right now my ultimate goal is, because sometimes God be shifting my goals a different direction. But right now it is to get as close to the mayor's office as possible, to eventually be able to provide proposals to execute more comprehensive delivery of services for the homeless population, right? Because a lot of times we think that homelessness is something that can just disappear. We think that you can literally just cure homelessness for people who don't work in the field. But homelessness is biblical. It goes all the way back to the Bible, if you believe in that, to present day. everybody, stuff happens, trauma happens, storms happen, fires happen, evictions happen. So, you'll always end up possibly in an emergency situation. But when those people do seek temporary shelter services, you do want them to get comprehensive services to where they're able to not come back. That should always be the end goal. Like, this one person should not come back, because with the understanding that something else will happen to somebody else, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep recycling
the same people.
One client. Yeah, you don't have to keep recycling the one client, because again, stuff happens, fires, traumatic experiences, evictions. And then some people are just not good with money management, living independently. They lack ADL skills, all of those kind of things. So shelters, especially in New York City, need to be more equipped to deal with those different components of people, to make sure that they can live successfully. So going into nonprofit management was the one prong thing. The other side of it, to make me a better administrator, was I Am She is a growing organization. Hopefully, we're going to celebrate 6 years this year. And it would give me more of the backspace for that, the more I try to elevate I Am She to a larger platform. Right now, we just have like the annual conferences and things like that to make sure people are networking and they stay connected, for years and years. Yeah. But I do want to begin to pivot I Am She to become a more structured nonprofit in New York City.
All right, dope. So that's two things I want to hit on real quick, because we definitely got to hit on I Am She and really go into details of what that is. Okay. But let's talk one more subject on the one more topic on the subject of homelessness. You said you did your dissertation on millennials being homeless, right? So right now, it's 1 million millennials right now probably gonna be listening to this, and they're probably feeling like, how can I end up homeless? And if I do end up homeless, what services are there that is provided to me to make sure that I don't become that revolving client? Can you speak about that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So going into my research, I thought that, I did think I had one opinion, but research backed it up differently. So based on how they define the millennial generation, we are narcissistic. We're called the Selfie Generation. We're only concerned with ourselves. We're living with our parents for longer periods of time. We're choosing not to live this alleged American dream that was outlined for us prior to, right? We're not loyal to corporations or industrial kind of work. We all want to be entrepreneurs, self-starters, do this kind of thing. In doing my research, a lot of them, and the other thing is we're allegedly the highest undergrad degreed generation. So that's how I went into the research. But then in executing the research, I met with persons who had college experience or some credits, but did not finish. Yeah. So unfortunately, my research did not cover if somebody had a college degree and somehow ended up in shelter. Right? I'm hopeful to continue research in that to see how that goes. But there were 5 themes that came about it. And most of it, the reason why they were staying, because my main focus was to understand why they're staying in shelter longer than the expected time, right? They're staying too long. We're just going there and we're living there. And I come to find out that one, it was comprehensive services. It was educating them on what they need to actually move out of shelter and providing additional assistance to do so. Now, shelter and homeless services is different per state, per city, things of that nature. There are only 3 right to shelter cities in the United States, which is Los Angeles, New York City, and Boston, Massachusetts. So every other city in the country has different regulations. Some shelters are only 30 days, some shelters are only 90 days. In New York City, you can just kind of live here. Don't come to New York City to live here, but you can kind of live here. But again, it goes back to, for my best advice, I guess, for a millennial is to think of the future. I think a lot of times in speaking to the ones that I did interview for my work, there was no future goal. It just was like, I'm in shelter, I need to just get out. Let me take that back. The males were more concerned with just getting out. Like, I just need to get out of this situation. The females were more focused on how to get out and stay out, right? So, and that could have just been the luck of those persons I interviewed, but we have to think about what's the long-term goal. I think as a generation, we don't think about when we retire, Other research says other stuff, like we have more diseases than our parents. We have, all those kind of things. So we're not thinking of when we're 75, 80, we're just thinking about what I'm gonna do next year for my birthday.
Yeah.
So we got to think about it like that in order to prevent homelessness or hardship. And the other thing is we kind of have to not live with our parents. So you have to figure out how to break that generational curse, that it appears like we're choosing to stay in. That's how it appears. That might not be the viewers that's viewing us today's concept, but like we're choosing to stay with our parents longer because we're delaying adulthood. Like we don't want to be a full-fledged adult. We kind of want to be like a part-time adult. Like just don't ask me where I'm going. I'm going on a trip, but I don't want to pay bills. We kind of have like that concept.
I feel you. I know what it is because I have talked to friends and like whatever, and like after high school, undergrad, they still at home, and it's like, yo, on the outside looking in, I'd be like a little bit jealous because I'd be like, man, I know they stacking up that money over there. I know they living good, like they don't got that much bills. But then on the flip side, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, you're not being independent. You're not being responsible for yourself. And then when you do get put out in that position to have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, like, are you able to? So,
Right. And that becomes the clutch, right? Because like, think about it. With some people, you stay at home, your parent probably still cooks, right? Give or take. Even if you're paying like a rent amount, they still cook, they're still providing. They're not showing you how to execute the bills. They're not showing you how to properly clean a house for real. They're just worried about your room, maybe the bathroom. So when you think about them having kids, because a lot of times people who end up on the family side of shelter, like because they had kids or whatever, or they're with somebody, like whatever, they end up in shelter because they think this is how they're declaring independence. Yeah. That's what they think. Like, okay, well, I have 3 kids. I have to get out of my mother's house. She don't have space. So me and my children's father, we go to shelter. It's almost like they're trying to use it to pivot their independence. And then they end up in shelter, and we end up teaching you how to clean your room, teaching you how to, properly look for a job, teaching you a resume. So that's why on the flip side of it, the shelter service delivery has to be more comprehensive, because how is the person going to survive now when we say, go get permanent housing?
Yeah, nice little segue right there. So of some of the service you provide, or the homeless shelters provide for the individuals is teaching them how to build a resume, teaching them how to take care of their personal belongings. Yep. And what else services do you provide for them?
So we do mental health referrals. Some people do come in with mental health. We do regular therapy referrals because sometimes you just need somebody outside of us to talk to. Pantry referrals, we get them clothes, like if they needed to do the resumes. We find services for their children, if it's a family with children. And then we start looking for housing. But in all honesty, we use something called the Housing First model here in New York City, which means you come in, we stabilize you, and then we need to focus on you getting housing. But there's a lot of catch-22s in our system that can be discouraging. For example, our minimum wage is $15, right? To a lot of people, that's a lot of money.
I would just say from the South, man, I think minimum wage probably like $8.25. So,
so you see what I'm saying? Our minimum wage here is $15. To somebody else, that's a lot of money. To the cost of living in New York City, you cannot survive. There's nowhere, if you made $15 an hour, even with overtime, there's very limited options for you to find affordable housing in New York City. So let's say you try to do better for you. Say you're living in shelter, you have a PA case, and now you make $15 an hour. You could be okay. But let's say you start finding a job that's $16, $17, $18, which again, still can't really afford to live independently in New York City. Then the system starts to cut you off because now you're making too much money because it's above the poverty line. Yeah. So then catch-22s like that is hindering some people, because now think about it. If you was in shelter and you're trying to do better for yourself, so now you're making $19 an hour, but they cut off your food stamps. How are you supposed to save money, pay for the Metro card to get yourself to work, and feed your kids, and then look for independent living? It's a catch-22. So then they end up just like, okay, never mind, I'm not gonna work, right? So now you have this mentality of people that come into the shelter like, I tried to get a job, the city cut me off, I gotta feed my kids, and they get stuck. So it's almost like if we were providing more comprehensive services and guidance to them to get them to understand that, like, okay, well, listen, let's aim for $25. Like, we have to pivot the conversations to be, I understand how you feel about feeding your kids. There's alternatives. We can use the the pantry. We can use on-site pantry. Like there's petty cash that shelter off. Like there's other options, but they're not typically used enough for people to be successful. Yeah. But it's a big catch-22 because again, affordable living in New York City is like, who can live there?
Yeah,
it's hard.
I feel you.
But again, outside looking in, like you said, outside looking in, somebody from the South was like, I can make $15 an hour, I'll be good. Yeah, in the South maybe, but here you make $15, you are not even a roommate for real, because you can't even split rent with somebody. And the math that they do here in New York City is 50 to 55% of your income should be towards rent. That's the bare minimum.
Yeah. So that's one check out of the month is the rent.
Correct.
And then the next check is all your minor bills.
Yes. Could you imagine that? Like, so literally we're teaching them to live check to check with the understanding that this one check should pay your rent. This other check, you should be living within that means of whatever that check is. And again, that's not necessarily realistic. And it's not a good motivator to get people to leave shelter, because again, you have to always think like them. If you didn't pay rent, right? If you didn't pay rent and you was living someplace and you had heat, hot water, food stamps, a stove, like why would you leave? No, seriously, why would you leave? We can't put you out. We can't put you on the street. So then you're losing their motivation to want to get out of shelter because they're, they live in good spaces. So we have to think about stuff like that.
Do you also provide financial education services too? So to teach them how to do their finances and budgets?
No.
Now currently.
Not even how to open a bank account. Like those are the kind of things that I feel like should be more comprehensive, right? Mm-hmm. We just assume that because a person is an adult and they walk into shelter, even if they have kids or don't have kids, they should just know better. Like he should just know better. Stop smoking crack. Like that's how they look at it. Just stop using the drug. And people have to understand it's really not that simple. It's genuinely not that simple. Families coming to shelter. She got 3 kids. She's 25. Why would we expect that she knows how to clean a bathroom, right? We should not expect that, or how to clean a unit, or how to take care of kids. That shouldn't just be an automatic. So going into the delivery of services has to be focused on stuff like you were saying. They lack socialization. First of all, they don't even talk to people outside of probably what's there at the shelter, right? So people don't know, but they don't know how to open a bank account. They don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know, how to log into a smart device. Like it's a not on their. But let's be honest, we have friends probably that also don't know how to balance a checkbook, and they are independent. So that's why we can't automatically assume that people know certain things, but the shelter services should be more geared towards that. So for the shelters that I've ran, I've made sure that case managers did that, right? Don't automatically call ACS on somebody or handle these things to be so aggressive, because that doesn't always get a good response, especially with our people. You don't want to call the police every time or call ACS to reprimand somebody. We don't respond well to reprimand, right? Yeah. We might respond well if we got the education. Let me give you some cleaning supplies and a mop, right? Let me get you some pots so you can cook for your kids. Basic stuff. Let me get you a Metro card so you can get to work if I can. Things of that nature, because not only does it build their motivation, but it'll allow the people to be successful.
That's dope. I'm glad, and with the shelters that you are over and administrating, that you are putting forth that right there, because that's really what we need. Not just in the homeless, but like overall, just a broad spectrum, like millennials, period, need to be educated on how to care for themselves and how to be financially responsible. So that's dope.
Right. And we have to remember it's also paired with a mindset that's positive, but has negative connotations. The concept that you can be everything can be negative and positive, right? Because we're not loyal to corporations. So we're breaking all of the known American dream kind of aspects of other generations, right? Because everybody want to be a millionaire, and everybody want to be a celebrity, and everybody want to be, I'm gonna own a business. Everybody thinks that way. But you have to look at it that really everybody can't do that, right? And your footprints in the sand or the footprints in the world can be a little smaller and be just as impactful. So all of us, and it's not just for us millennials, but also for Generation Z, we're starting to lose the ambition that our other generations before us had, that could shift culturally, like really bad, if we're not really paying attention to how we're looking at things. Because if you can't respond or be a good employee, how are you going to be a good employer? So when you talk about trying to run a business, right? How are you going to run that business if you didn't even come to work? Like, you didn't go to work for somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, you did not do what you were supposed to do. So we're not, see how I'm saying we don't think that far? We're just like, nah, I don't want to report to nobody. Can't nobody tell me, you know, what I go to work for. But sometimes you need to be the employee, so that when you become an employer, there's going to be a part of your business that is called employee relations, right? It's called human resources. Yeah. And if you was a bad employee, there are going to be other bad employees. And then how are you going to handle them? So we have to start thinking past today.
Yeah. Like, so that's one thing that I do, like being in like the positions I've been in, like management, leadership positions or whatever, is like learning from someone else leading me so that I can learn how to lead others. So in my own businesses, it's like, oh man, you must have done did this before. You're like, nah, I just took the assets, I took the mindset from where I came from other leadership things, and I'm applying it. So yeah, people really got to get in that mindset of like, okay, well, I'm an employee now, but let me see what the manager does. Let me see how the owner talks. Let me see how they get things done, so that I can start doing or mimicking those things and put my twist to it to get the same results. Matter of fact, get better results.
Yep, absolutely.
But the second thing I want to get into, you mentioned your nonprofit, I Am She. Please, let's get a little breakdown of this and get some of this sisterhood, some of this woman healing and empowerment knowledge. What's up? Talk to us.
So I Am She started in 2015. I gotta look at the dates. I'm like 2015. Mm-hmm. And it is focused on the advancement of minority women and girls. Here's my spin on it, right? In my career, I was always told that, be careful, the white is after us. Like that's what I was told. Like, they're after us. They don't like us. Think about it. This is how we're brought up, blah, blah, blah. Every time I hit a ceiling glass, it was not a white person. Ever. It was never a white person. Right. It was always a sister. It was always a sister. Let me not even say a brother. It was always a sister. Mm-hmm. And that used to bother me, but not bother me so much that I wasn't going to break that glass ceiling. But it bothered me at the fact that we, as a community of minority women, we spend so much time belittling each other, right? Or breaking down each other, that there is no sisterhood between us. And I'll take it a step further to say that it doesn't make us good sisters, good wives, good partners, it doesn't help us, because we're not invested in our substance. In addition to that, the news portrays us, not even news, TV portrays us as if we're just ratchet hood boogers that fight over men on reality TV, right? Let's be honest. That is how we are.
Of the television.
That's all we do, right? That we don't do anything else. And we must have big butts and little waists. Yeah, this is big butts and little waists, and we got to go to DR. Like, this is how. And then when you think of, like, when you really stop and think about it, I remember all of the trainings from my mother and my grandmother, who was like, listen, you can be as pretty as you want to be, but if your attitude sucks, then you're really ugly. Like, I remember hearing that. Now, back then I was like, oh, my mom's a hater, right? That was me. Oh, she's a hater. But when you start to actually internalize those things, you realize that you need substance. Then when I went to undergrad, my mentor, she was like, you smart and all, but you're not applying yourself. So I'm going ahead and locking you out my class. Miss, I need to graduate. Like, she was like, well, then you need to work harder. Having those kind of influences, I think, is what got me, I know is what got me to where I'm at today. So the best way to do that is to get these young girls to understand that you're more than your body, right? You're more than these social media models or Instagram, whatever, or bottle waitresses. No offense to them, right? Because they make good money. Yeah. But it should always take you to another place, right? I modeled, I threw parties, I did it, but that did not, like, I was paralleling that at the time of getting a degree. It's not like I was throwing parties and just throwing parties because I thought at 75, my retirement plan was going to come from throwing parties, right? No, I said, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to have a full-time job, and I'm a party. Like, that's kind of how I did it. So I Am She came about from that, to where I feel like minority women and girls should have this open space to be just that, a woman and a girl. Like, they should have a space to just talk to each other and realize that the same stuff you are going through at 17, the lady at 80, she went through it too. And the best way for you to overcome that is to talk about it. We don't have a lot of open spaces. Excuse me. We don't have a lot of open, free spaces in our life. Black women are taught to, you know, bend, don't break, don't cry, you know, take care of the household, do better. Like the same thing that our Black brothers are told to do too. So at what point do we stop and heal each other, right?
Yeah.
At what point then, after you heal, do you then empower somebody else? So that's where you get, you know, the acronym I Am She. So the I is a modeling picture of me from back when I was modeling, right? And it was a very strong stance. The M is the affirmation that you put before yourself. So you put I am before whatever the affirmation is. So where you're looking to go, you remove the she, obviously. You put I am strong, I am wisdom, I am blessed, like that, how it goes. Then what you do is the sisterhood is what I'm doing with the annual conferences and the Facebook page and the Instagrams and things like that. But at each conference, we focus on healing. There's a therapeutic process to some of the presenters where people are actually looking at what trauma I've experienced that is impacting me moving forward. Mm-hmm. You know, like what I went through, domestic violence, toxic relationships, identifying if it's you. It might be you, sis. You the problem. Like, we need to identify that together, right? It might be you. And then the more you build that sisterhood and work on healing, that's your substance. And then you can go out and empower other people.
That's dope.
So that's where the whole vision came from. It's grown from 25 women now to 75 women. Hopefully we'll continue to grow. I feel like my timing is always weird because I do it in April or May. And then I feel like all these mothers be like, this is too much celebration. But that's the time that it happens. And, you know, I just keep doing it as it relates to talking to people and building the mentorship. So I am focused on this year pivoting the mentorship piece and going a little deeper, right? Getting an actual group of mentors, putting in like a mentorship training module for those persons on how I Am She should actually look. And then hopefully pivot into New York City education school system.
Dope. Let's unpack some of this because you gave us so much so quick. So I Am She started back in 2015. Mm-hmm. And you just want to give the woman a voice or a sense of empowerment to be more than just a stereotype or more than just a place where people just see you one way, because nobody's just one dimensional, right? We all are like an onion. We got many layers. Right. And so you bring in ladies that's older and younger girls to let them have that conversation to be like, hey, there's the older woman giving advice down to be like, I went through this and this is how you can get through it. And the younger girls giving a different perspective, like, listen, it's a different time now. It's just kind of how the conversations go.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's a different time, but it's really not. Like, that's the part we have to identify. It's different, but comparable. I can tell my grandmother, who's 77, stories that I'm going through, and she got a comparable story to the same way. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's just a matter of me feeling safe and comfortable to talk to another person, another woman. Let me not say another woman. We have so many silent battles, and this might be an African-American community thing, but there are so many silent battles that you just ignore it, right? You ignore it, you move on, you go to sleep, you wake up, you do it again. You end up in relationships that you don't need to end up in. You don't have motivation to move forward. You have kids early, like, because nobody was there to mentor you. Nobody was there to say, stop doing that. Like, just stop. Like, you look ridiculous. You know, like, you laughing at me because you know what I'm
Yeah, yeah, because I got sisters and cousins too,
I'm doing
and
that.
like you never
Yeah.
know what they're going through until like one moment. You know what I mean? You might be just either you chilling and drinking or you just hanging out, and it's that moment of like vulnerability, and they be like, you know what? I got something on my chest. I need to get your opinion. And they give you a whole scenario or rundown of like a relationship, either at the job, like a coworker type relationship, or intimate boyfriend girlfriend type relationship, or just
Uh-huh.
a friendship. And they start giving you like the history of it, and you be like, yo, why are you going through that?
Wow.
What made you want to stay here? Or if you felt, if like we all feel some, we all know when something feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's like, yo, if you feel uncomfortable, why didn't you change it? But if
And
it's
that's the thing. Like, we don't talk about stuff. We think that it's normal, and the media doesn't help us. If you sit around and watch Love and Hip Hop long enough, you really think that you're supposed to be fighting and stuff with your man all the time. Like, you really think this. And you know, let's be honest. We are a generation, well, millennials in particular, are a generation of broken homes. That's how research defines this. A lot of single parent households. So you might not have seen a marriage or a healthy marriage. Let me say healthy marriage, because you might have saw a marriage, it might not have been healthy, right? Or how, so we take on these things, and then you get older. You know, people have the nature versus nurture concept. Some people have the tough love concept. Like, there's so many concepts, and I don't think that there's a 100% right way of doing life. But I do think there's a part of you that has to be comfortable with the decisions that you make for your life. That's how I look at it. Like, for a long time, there were things about me that I just didn't share. I did not feel comfortable. I didn't have the open space to do that. I wasn't as comfortable in my skin. That, now looking back, was reflective in the type of person I hung out with, the type of parties I went to, the type of conversations I was involved in, the type of men I decided to talk to. Like, now looking back, it was like, no wonder, sis, your self-esteem was low. You thought you was bad. You know, your hair was, you know, you look good on the outside, but your self-esteem was like, you get what I'm
yeah.
saying? So, but if we're not having those conversations, like, and we should have conversations between both genders, but the sisters need to have it too. In a career realm, I shouldn't walk into a room and you're intimidated because, like, my hair is real. That should not be a topic of conversation. It's so minute to anything, but that is what happens in jobs. So it's like, yeah, don't promote her. She's too smart.
Yeah.
You know, don't promote sis. She thinks she's cute. No, you think, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of those things are happening.
Yeah.
So I am, she creates this arena where you just, I don't want to say break down, but you need to. You have to go into the realm of being so comfortable and start talking to people, because I really wish I can like show, I really can't because it's a safe space.
Yeah.
To show how women have such breakthroughs at I Am She, of domestic violence and suicidal ideations, and, you know, the fact that, you know, this relationship is really not working, but they really don't want to get out of it. All of that happens. And then in, you know, the presenters, it's hopeful that they take something, and some women have broken out of situations and become better, right? Some people are still processing through it. But I think that healing component is the major piece, because it's going to make us better overall. So that's why but my real target is the young girls, right? That's my real target, because that more toxicity is happening for our children than for us, right? We, however, our age, our mothers and aunts, and, you know, we just need to stop and actually seek the resources that are out there. We need to go ahead and break this stigma that we shouldn't go seek counseling and we shouldn't talk to nobody, because we are creating generations of more traumatic people.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're doing, right? If I don't have children, so if I don't heal, I'm going to
Pass it along. Pass that trauma down to everything.
instantly, yeah. Like, my kid will come out and be like, if I'm mad about, you know, being in a single parent household from my upbringing, which I'm not, but let's say I was.
Yeah.
My kid might grow up and resent their father automatically, because I'm pushing something, you know what I'm saying? I'm pushing something that I didn't heal from onto my kids. And then my kids, I don't want to do that. So I was very
childhood dramas that you're just passing along. Yeah. But let me get back to this one thing you just said. You was like, I Am She wants to focus on the younger generation, the younger girls, because you want to break their toxicity, right?
Yeah,
So
big time.
first, let's try to identify what you think of their toxicities and what can I Am She do to help break that.
So the main thing is that they're self-conscious and they have issues that even we did not go through as millennials. Sexual identity crisis, suicide ideation, sometimes homicidal ideations. They have low self-esteem. There's more mental health diagnoses, and the media and TV, like I was telling you, portrays them in a different light. So they think that's cool. This is what I'm supposed to do, and they don't think of the future either.
Yeah.
So a lot of girls focus on their body.
Mhm.
That's really their, like, they have to be cute and they have to have a body, and that's fine because I was cute, girl, like that's fine. But you need to be doing something parallel to having a big butt. Like something has to match the big butt, because guess what, your big butt's gonna fade. Like you're gonna get older, that's gonna fade. So I Am She, the goal is to become a vendor in the New York City public school system, and then start outreaching to, I do want to focus on high school age, because that's the age where you start to explore your sexuality, you start to explore relationships, they all in
Yeah.
love, you start to explore what your body's supposed to look like, focusing more on 9 to 12 and maybe 8th grade, but that's middle school,
Mhm.
9 to 12 year olds, and have actual mentorship and guidance with those persons, having a group of mentors that go through a set of training that is sitting down with sis and saying, listen, you cute, but you still need to know how to read. Like they need to be having those hard conversations, because I don't think that they're getting them. And if they are getting them, it's not as hard as it might need to be, or maybe they're just not getting them. So that's how I Am She will pivot for that. It just requires, as we all know, a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of structure, and funding. It does require funding. So we're in that process of grant writing. We're in the process with New York City to become an official vendor, because that's what you need to do in order to properly go into our New York City public school systems,
Mhm.
and start to pair up with those schools to launch the mentorship program. And hopefully it'll be successful. So hopefully I am up and running by 2022.
Yeah.
So
Next
it's going
year,
to
let's do
require
it.
a lot of work right now in 2021, and the virtual system is helping, because we don't have to go anywhere. But yeah, that's the ultimate goal, so we can at least launch it in one of our school systems or one of our schools in New York City.
That's dope. Like I Am She is out here gonna come in, mentor, educate the kids on, I guess, from what we getting is social media and using that platform in a more productive manner, because that's where they getting these things from, these ideas, these
Yeah.
TikTok videos,
Oh, don't get me started on TikTok.
all these challenges. So coming in, focused on the ninth to the 12th grade is the new goal. And
Hmm.
your degree in being a nonprofit administrator is helping you do this because you know the ins and outs.
I mean, ultimately, I'm doing the same exact work. That's the thing. Even though I'm an administrator, I prefer to be with clients, right? I
Yeah.
prefer to see clients, talk to clients, be with clients. And no matter if they're young, old, kids, bae, it doesn't matter. I motivate them to think outside of being in shelter. So I really, when I think about it, I'm doing the exact same thing. It's just two different demographics, right? One is to get you to understand the importance of being independent, as far as housing is concerned and not being in shelter. The other one is how to be a better version of yourself, right? We all have, my grandmother down, have been through phases of being cute, want to be with a man, want to chase a man, want to, like, sis, you didn't make this up. Like that's what I want to try to tell them. You are not doing anything new that me, my mom, my grandmother, nothing new. And I'm sure you got sisters, you can relate.
Yeah.
Like you didn't invent the wheel, sis. You are just, it's just a new version. And in order for me to help you, there's some things that I learned that now I remember my mother saying to me, and now it makes sense. So now it's my obligation to pass that on, right? And now it's worse because we're in this social media era. Like you want to post your body, you got to remember, sister, that really don't go away. I wasn't in that generation,
Me,
right?
hey, I'm glad when we was in college certain time, like the camera phone really wasn't that popular right there, you know, but that's a
Right.
whole nother topic.
I remember the first flip phone that had the camera that was attached to it.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I'm not old, but I still remember that. But we wasn't in that generation where everything was posted.
Yeah.
We evolved to that generation. And then by that point, we probably didn't want to post but so much, right?
Yeah.
But these kids are in a generation of, they want to post their body, they want to post what they're doing, they want to post what they're drinking, popping, smoking. Like somebody, like we're the people that's like, stop posting that, sis. Like you really can't get that back. Like once your body ends up on Google, it's a wrap. The amount of work you're gonna have to do to convince Google to take that down, right? And I experienced that. I experienced it on a very lower level. But when I was modeling, I was like, oh, print, you know, they could put me in this virtual magazine or whatever. I had to work to get all that removed and take it down, and then copywriting. And I fought for all of that. I fought for my image and my reputation because it clicked to me later on. So it's like, I actually went through it. So now I can talk to somebody who decides to post their body to say, take that down, like take it down. Like take it down, right? Because when you get into your career, which again, we're not thinking about, you're going to have to find one of these companies that claim that they can erase all your stuff from the media. Like you're going to start paying thousands of dollars to get your fun times removed.
Yeah.
So trying to get them to understand that there's a tactful way to have fun and be respected, right? And then eventually, outside of the vending in New York City, I've never included men in I Am She, right? It's always been women talking to women. But slowly I'm starting to pivot, you know, when I have these like visions and thoughts of planning, to include men, like respectable men in the conversation, because sometimes women need to hear what a man sees. Like they need to have those conversations. You remember like when me and you first met, we instantly started having conversations like that because sometimes women don't even hear it. So you think that you really thought he liked you because you had that tight dress. Like he needs to really, like you need a man's perspective on what that really looks like to them. You know what I mean? Because then when you're heartbroken later on, because everybody doesn't have brothers, right? And if you do have a brother, they might be younger, whatever, you still need a man's perspective. So slowly I'm starting to think that I should have a man speaker or maybe a man panel to where women are open, because that's the other thing. They got to be open. It cannot be defensive. This is not a, you know.
This is an open space.
This is not a man, this is not Mars versus Venus kind of conversation, but to be open on what men see, what men want, what they expect as it relates to like that relationship part, you know, and how that plays out for that part. So that's slowly starting to become one of these year's conferences where I'm inviting men to the conversation.
Speaking of conferences, so how can people get in contact with the I Am She platform program, the nonprofit, to either attend the conference, get some information, or even get in contact with you so that they can be able to reach out to you if they have any questions?
Got you. So we have a website, it's called yesimshe.com. And this year we are doing a hybrid of the conference because we can actually still go outside. Cuomo is letting us go outside, y'all. So we're going outside. So we're having it where we're doing a safe physical conference, of course, with all of the COVID guidelines and restrictions to maintain, you know, social distancing and things like that. But there will also be the virtual component. So this year, when the information goes up, which it should be up by April 1st, is going to allow the person to choose if they want to do virtual or if they want to come in person for the ticket price. And it will be streaming from yesimshe.com. So look out for that. However, we do have t-shirts, sweatshirts, masks, things of that nature on yesimshe.com/shop, right? To contact us on Instagram, it's at yesimshe. To contact me on Instagram is at Dr.XZR. at dr.xzr. And then we're on Facebook. On Facebook, you can search us as Yes, I Am She. And it'll take you to our page. But yeah, we love to network. We want to see everybody. We're really hopeful. We're having vendors this year that we're in person. We do want to support, you know, minority female businesses. And we're just going to have a good time. And this year it'll be May 15th, 2021. And we're in New Rochelle, New York.
That's dope. That's dope. I hope my audience take note of that. Get in contact with you. Come out, support I Am She. It's a great platform for women. There's going to be empowerment, some sisterhood in this open space to really, you
Absolutely.
know, to just open up, man. So I appreciate you, Lex, my good
It was
friend, for
great
coming on
being out here with you. We could have kept talking because me and you could talk for.
forever. It's always a good conversation. I love it. I love it. But
But
I
thanks for having
appreciate you.
me. Yeah.
Well, this is Pill Talk Podcast with Dr. Bar 2. This is National Women's Month, March 2021. I got my girl here, Dr. Lex, Dr. Riviera, with me today. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.